Hello, dear friends. Today is the 25th of August, 2025 year, and this is a traditional overview of the map of hostilities. As of today, a huge number of changes are being received almost along the entire line of contact. And the main changes are taking place today in the Orekhovsky direction, in the South Donetsk direction, in the Pokrovsky direction, in the Konstantinovsky direction, in the Seversky direction, and there are news of the Sumy direction, which we will talk about and look at in this video. And before we start, according to tradition, I would sincerely like to ask you to subscribe to the channel. With your subscription, you greatly help the development of the channel. Thank you to everyone who subscribed. And let's start with the Kherson direction. Today, 2 arrivals were recorded in the Kherson direction over the past day, in the area of the settlement of Nikolskoye, and in the area of Antonovka. The Ukrainian side also reported that 3 attacks were repulsed by the Russian army in the area of the village of Dacha. Otherwise, there are F-drones and artillery working all along the line. F-drones work on the positions of the APU, as well as F-drones work on the positions of the Russians. And the same goes for artillery. The front line has not changed for today. And also, as you know, there was no video footage yesterday, and the arrival was recorded yesterday, in the area of the village of Kazatskaya. Otherwise, here's the news for today. We are moving with you to the Orekhovsky direction. In the Orekhovsky direction, there are changes in the area of the settlement of Plavny and in the area of the settlement of Kamenskaya. Let me remind you that these changes were also made yesterday, since there was no video material yesterday. In the area of the settlement of Plavny, Russian troops advanced to square kilometers. The entire territory marked in red has now come under the control of the Russian military. And the fighting was conducted here at this point. There were counterpositional fighting. Thus, we can note that the Ukrainian military is still trying to counterattack and stabilize the front line, preventing the Russians from advancing. And Russian troops continue to attack the AFU positions near the village of Stepnogorsk. The positions of the AFU personnel were attacked here with the help of F-drones from the Russian army. And there is also an advance of the Russian military to the east of Kamenskoye. The entire territory marked in red has also come under the control of the Russian military for today. Here the advance was up to 2.5 kilometers and the whole area was completely cleared. As for the settlement of Malaya Takmaka, let's move on to it. In the area of Malaya Takaya, Russian troops are attacking the AFU positions in the smallest Tamachka, in the center of Malaya Tamachka. And it is also reported that the Russian military is clearing a pocket between 2 roads leading to Orkhov. This is where the main road to Orkhov goes, and here another road passes to Orkhov. And according to some reports, Russian troops are clearing this whole pocket, but we can assume that most likely the pocket is not being cleaned here, and this information is premature, since there is a huge number of F calculations at the APU working here, and there is simply no need to consolidate in these forest belts without further offensive actions, since this is equal to suicide. Therefore, we will see the cleaning of the pocket after the Russian troops advance a little in Malaya Takmachka. But so far there is no progress recorded here. And it is also recorded that the Ukrainian military is attacking the positions of the Russians in the very settlement of Novy Pokrovka. Yes, attacks with the help of drones, not with the help of infantry, but still here the Russians' positions are in tension. Otherwise, the front line has not changed here today, and there are mainly F-duels going on here. Therefore, we continue to monitor the situation in this area of hostilities and move on with you. We are moving with you to the Gulyapali direction. There are reports that Russian troops are attacking the AFU positions in the area of the settlements of Zeleny Gay, and in the area of the settlement of Poltavka from Malinovka. But let me remind you that information has repeatedly appeared that Russian troops are moving from Malinovka in the direction of the settlement of Poltavka and have even gained a foothold. There was information that Russian troops had even gained a foothold in this locality, but this information turned out to be premature. And Russian troops did not advance in this locality here. And now there is information that Russian troops are attacking the AFU positions in the area of Zeleny Gay and Poltava. But based on the information we received earlier, we can conclude that attacks are carried out here with the help of drones. In the area of the Green Guy, the positions of the AFU were attacked, most likely with the help of V-Padrons. The same applies to Poltava. But in the area of Olgovsky, information is received that Russian troops have taken this settlement under their control and are already moving in the direction of the settlement of Poltava. Therefore, we will not get ahead of events here. The map is still unchanged. In the coming days, There will be supporting materials from Olgovsky, most likely a video with the installation of the flag. Or the Ukrainian side will recognize the loss of Olgovsky and make changes to the map. So far, all the information here is in the form of news, so there are no changes on the map for today. We are moving on with you. We proceed to the settlement of Kamyshevaka. According to some reports, Russian troops have gained a foothold in this settlement. But this information also appeared earlier from pro-Russian sources. Again, this information is ahead of events. And there was information that Russian troops from Shevchenko advanced into the Kamyshevaki area and gained a foothold on the outskirts. This information did not correspond to reality, and today there is information that is really confirmed by the data. This area of the fighting has completely come under the control of the Russians. It has been completely cleared. And here the advance was up to 4 kilometers in favor of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, and thus we can conclude that the pocket between Novaya Georgievka and Shevchenko is gradually being cleaned. Let me remind you that Novaya Georgievka has come under the full control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. And this information has been fully confirmed. And now there is a sweep most likely of this pocket. It is possible that at the time of recording the video, this pocket has already passed under the control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. As for Kamyshevaka itself, there are attacks on the AFU positions in this locality, and in the coming days. Perhaps even by the middle of this week, we will see the advance of Russian forces in this locality. So far, there is no talk of securing the Russian military in this locality, but we continue to monitor the situation and move on with you. In the area of the settlement Andriivka, Klevtsova, Tolstoy, Green Guy, and Nohel, a lot of controversial information comes from these settlements. Today, we received information that there were positional battles in the area of the settlement of Tolstoy, to the west of this settlement at this point. And as you know, there was information earlier that the Ukrainian military took the settlement of Tolstoy under full control. And from this point, there was a video with the installation of the flag. And thus, there is a very controversial situation here, how the battles were fought to the west of the settlement of Tolstoy. If this settlement is already under the control of the AFU, here Tolstoy is most likely under the control of Russian forces, or he is in a gray zone, and neither side controls this settlement. The same goes for Andriivka, Klevtsov. There were positional fighting in the eastern outskirts of this settlement. As soon as the situation clears up, we will make all the changes to the map and talk to you about everything. Also, information comes from the settlements of Zeleny Guy and Ivanovka. It is reported from Ukrainian sources that counterattacks in the direction of the Green Guy are being conducted by the AFU. The pro-Russian side reports that Russian troops are attacking here in the direction of the settlement of Ivanovka, and even forced the river somewhere in the forests. The Volchi River flows here and even gained a foothold on the southern outskirts of Ivanovka. But this information has not been confirmed, as well as the information that the APU counterattacked the positions of the Russians in the area of Green Guy was not confirmed. Most likely, mutual attacks are carried out here with the help of AF drones. The Ukrainian military is attacking the positions of the Russians with the help of AF drones in the Green Guy. The Russian military is attacking the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in the area of the settlement of Ivanovka. And there is confirmed information from the settlement of Fillet. As you know, earlier there was information from the Ministry of Defense, reports from the Ministry of Defense, that Fillet came under the control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. And from this point came a video material on which the flag of the armed forces of the Russian Federation is installed. The positions of the Russians were attacked here with the help of a Ukrainian F drone. Thus, we can note that this entire territory has now come under the control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. And the advance here, as reported, amounted to up to 2.5 kilometers in this area of hostilities. Also, a video material came from this point. An APU armored car was destroyed here. And today, in this area of hostilities, such news is also reported that the positions of the Russians in the area of the village of Daknaya were attacked. Otherwise, there are such changes. We are moving on with you. In the area of the settlement of Moravka, the positions of the AFU were attacked. The Ukrainian side reported that several attacks from the Russian army were repulsed. But let me remind you that here the attacks are mainly carried out with the help of FP buckets. So far, the infantry is not advancing here. Earlier there was information that Russian troops from Kotlyrovka are moving in the direction of the supply road. But the APU has serious strong points here, so Russian troops will not be able to approach most likely and cut off Moravka from supply. Or take it from two sides, from the south and from the east, but come up and cut the road, supplies just won't come out like that. Since there is basically a huge field going on here, which is most likely being shot through. Therefore, this area is very difficult for assault operations. As for the settlement of Uduknaya, as you know, earlier there was information that Russian troops advanced 400 meters deep into Uduknoy, in the center of Uduknoy. The entire territory marked in red came under the control of the Russians 2 days ago. From this point, there was a video with the presence of the Russian military. And today there is information that Russian troops are conducting offensive actions in the direction of the settlement of Molodetskaya and in the northern part of Uduknoy. Russian attacks were repulsed here, according to the Ukrainian side, in the area of Molodetsky and in the northern part of Udukny. Thus, we can conclude that the Russian troops are expanding the control zone, and perhaps, at the time of recording the video, the control zone in favor of the Russian military in Uduknoy is much wider than it is currently marked on the map. The same goes for Katlino. Positional combat operations were conducted here in the northern part of this settlement. For today, the map here is unchanged, but in the coming days, video materials about the advance of the Russian military may also come from here, and if the APU does not attempt to counterattack and stabilize the front line. And we are moving with you to the Pokrov direction. There are news from the settlement of Novopavlovka and news from this area of hostilities between Chunashina and Novopavlovka. As you know, earlier Russian troops took Novoukrenka under their control, under full control. There was also information that Russian troops were advancing towards the settlement of Novopavlovka and took Chunashin under full control. But this information has not been confirmed. This information was in the form of news. And now Chunashina, most likely, it can be assumed that she is in a gray zone and neither the Russian nor the Ukrainian military controls her, and the defense line of the APU is built in the area of the settlement of Novopavlovka. And periodically the Ukrainian military move in the direction of the new Ukrainian and attack the positions of the Russians. In turn, Russian troops today attacked the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in the area of the settlement of Novopavlovka. Also, positional fighting was conducted to the north of the locality of Lysovka and Sukhoi Yar. Otherwise, the map here is unchanged for today. And let's move on to the changes. There are changes north of the reward world. Let me remind you that in the Mir Award area, FABs from Russian aviation arrive daily. And today is no exception, FAB's arrival was recorded at this point. Let me remind you that during the week, FABs flew here very often to the positions of the APU, also to the control points of the WAV. And today there is an advance of the Russian military in the northern part of the settlement of Mir Awards. It was from this point that the video material came, on which the advanced positions of the Russians were located. Here the advance was up to 2 kilometers. The entire territory marked in red has been completely cleared and has come under the control of Russian forces. As you know, the new economical one also came under the control of the Russians much earlier. But today additional supporting materials have come about the cleansing of this settlement, from the complete taking of this settlement under the control of the Russian military. And there was also information that these buildings, industrial buildings, mines also came under the full control of the armed forces of the Russian army. And we can assume that in the coming days, these industrial buildings may also come under the control of the Russians. There are such changes here today. We move with you further along the map to the locality of Rudinskaya and Krasny Estuary. Rudinskaya, for the most part, most of Rudinsky is under the control of the Ukrainian army, despite the fact that the Russian military has gained a foothold and taken part of this settlement. And also the Red Estuary is under the control of the APU. And let me remind you that in some pro-Russian sources there is information that Rudinskaya has completely come under the control of the Russians. The Russian military cut off the supply road physically and even advanced to the west of Rudinsky. Here on this territory in the fields, in the forest belts, but this information again does not correspond to reality. Some pro-Russian sources are ahead of events, and now most of the motherland is under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine. Yes, the supply road is under the fire control of the Russians, but still it is not physically cut. And there are changes in the area of the settlement of Vladimirovka. As you know, earlier Pankovka came under the control of the Russians. This is what we talked about 2 days ago. And there was information that Russian troops took Vladimirovka Rusin Yar. This is where Rusin Yar and Katerinovka are located. This is where Katerina is located. This information is reported in Russian news sources. And if this is really the case, then in the coming days we will celebrate Vladimirovka in favor of the Russian army. In the meantime, no video materials or any additional supporting information have been received from here. So Vladimirovka has not yet been painted over in favor of the Russian army. It is possible that this locality has already come under the control of the Russians, since information comes from here with a delay. But we will not get ahead of events. The same also applies to Rusin Yar. Reports that Rusin Yar has been taken have been received for 2 weeks. They also received information that between Poltava and Rusin Yar, this pocket has been cleaned. But the information came only from this point. To date, a video has come in where Russian troops were attacked by the AFU. Here the advance was up to 1 kilometer. It is possible that Rusin Yar has completely come under the control of the Russians, but if this is true, then we will make changes in the coming days as soon as we receive confirmation information. The same applies to the settlement of Dronovka. Let me remind you that this information appeared a few days ago, and there was also information a few days ago that the Klibin Bull completely came under the control of the Russians. And there was also information that Serebryansky was also cleaned up and came under the control of the Russians. But here the information may be ahead of events. It is possible that no video materials are provided from here about the capture of these settlements. And in fact this entire territory may have already come under the control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. As soon as the information arrives, we will make changes to the map. And today the map looks like this. As for this ledge in the Petrovka area, in the area of the Golden Well, they are also conducting positional combat operations. In the Vesely area. As of today, there are no changes on the map, but there are most likely changes here. Since earlier Russian troops attacked the settlement of Rubezny Steppes and Volny. There were attacks here, and according to reports from pro-Russian sources, Russian troops were expanding the control zone here. And today there is such news here. We are moving with you to the Seversk direction. Opposition fighting is underway in the Seversk area. Russian troops are attacking the AFU positions in Seversk itself. Also, the Ukrainian military is attacking the positions of the Russians in Serebryansk and in the village of Grigoryevka, with the help of Patrons. Grigoryevka. And as for the cleaning of the Serebryansky forest, today we received confirming information that Russian troops have cleaned up this pocket between the Torsky and Serebryansky forests. After all, this entire territory has come under the control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Here the advance was up to 4 kilometers, and according to some reports, in fact, the Serebryansky forest has already been cleared and has come under the control of the Russians. There are scattered groups of the armed forces of Ukraine, which are now being liquidated, and some groups still manage to roll back. In the area of the settlement of Yampol, Russian troops are having success here. And if the armed forces of the Russian Federation approach the settlement of Yampol, they can physically cut the supply road to Seversk. Since the supply road to Seversk passes here, and after that Russian troops can take Seversk itself into a semicircle and begin assault operations. But let's not get ahead of events in this area of hostilities. We continue to monitor the situation and move on with you. A forest area was also cleared in the Krasnolomensky direction, near the settlement of Yampolovka. But it was probably cleared a very long time ago. Only today the supporting materials were received. And, as you know, Russian troops have already attacked the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in the area of the settlement of Myrnaya. And there was information that Russian troops took the well under full control. But there was no confirming information, despite the fact that the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation announced the capture of the well a week ago. As for the progress in the area of the settlement of Shandrigolova, there has been no progress recorded for today. No data has been received, but information has been received from the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation that the average has completely come under the control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. And if this is true, then in the next couple of days, we will receive materials confirming this, and we will make changes to the map. In the area of Karpovka and in the area of Red Kadub, positional fighting, without any advance of one of the parties. We are moving with you further to the Kopensky direction. Russian Drugs continue to work here as well. Earlier, as you know, there was a Drug group. It was at this point that the Russians' positions were attacked with the help of a tank. The APU conducted a tank attack on the positions of the Russians. And today this territory is marked in gray. Perhaps the Russian military was eliminated. Perhaps the Russian military managed to roll back and leave this territory. but there are reports that the armed forces of the Russian Federation, Drug groups, assault groups are working in the northern part of Kapinsk. Therefore, there is such news here for today. No major advances in favor of the Russian army have been recorded. We are moving with you further along the map. Positional combat operations are underway in the area of Volchanskaya. It was from this point that the video material came, on which the FAP arrives at the positions of the APU. Here at this point, there was a FAB arrival in terms of personnel, reserves of the armed forces of Ukraine, and in the rest here, without any major changes. The same applies to the Lipetsk region. Positional combat operations are being conducted here. We are moving with you to the Sumy direction. Here, as you know, Unikovka has completely come under the control of the Russians. Now it is reported that the cleaning of the vicinity of the mine clearance of this settlement is underway, and perhaps in the next 2 days. Most likely tomorrow, or today, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation will announce that Unikovka has come under the full control of the armed forces of the Russian army. And as for the advancement of the Ukrainian military, today this area of hostilities has been painted in favor of the Ukrainian military, the Ukrainian army. Here the advance was up to 300 meters, but let me remind you that earlier the Ukrainian military attacked the positions of the Russians in the area of the settlement of Alexivka and failed to succeed. And the same thing now applies in the area of the settlement of Kondratovka. The Ukrainian military tried to attack the positions of the Russians in the area of the settlement of Konstantinovka, but failed, and Russian troops are already counterattacking the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in the area of the settlement of Kondratovka. And for today we have such news. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you soon.